It's time for Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group with certified financial planners Kevin Korhorn, Mike Bernard, and Josh Gregory.
Welcome to another episode of the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group, where every week we're helping you take your next wise step in your financial life. Thanks for being here, friends. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm your host. I'm also one of the CFPs on the program. With me in the KFG studios, my business partners and fellow CFPs, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory.
Are you using a password manager? This helpful tool not only keeps your passwords safe and accessible to you only, but it can be a huge benefit if and when something happens to you. So we'll explain what they are and how they work on this hour of the Wise Money Show.
I was a resistor. Still sort of am, a little bit, like not fully in, but I'm mostly there, and I don't know where you're at on that spectrum. We're going to explain what it is, give you some suggestions, and help you with all that right now. If you have a question for the show, we'd love to hear from you. You can call or text 574-222-2000. That's 574-222-2000. Online, wisemoneyshow.com, and then all over social media, wherever you're at, we are there as well. Search The Wise Money Show. Connect with us there as well. I'm going to start with a story, and it's personal. It's real. Happened to me. You may have a similar story, or I'm sure, had this concern. And so this is several years ago. My father-in-law started showing some signs of diminished capacity. He's forgetful. In fact, when it finally stood out, he and my wife would, my wife was a ballet dancer, and so they would do this dance together and part of a performance with a group, and he couldn't remember the steps, and he got very flustered. And then all of a sudden, he started not remembering what he was supposed to do with his job. And we finally, encouraged him to get things checked out. Doctor at first said, "Oh, no, you're fine. You're just getting older. You're fine." But 6 months later, and repeat stories and lots of worry, and it was confirmed he had early onset Alzheimer's. And it was very hard, but we at least had that warning. And, at first, if you haven't dealt with that, at first you're in denial. Like, no, I'm mostly still there, and I am just a little forgetful. I'm getting older, whatever. But very quickly, it transitioned to he can't care for himself or really be responsible for lots of things. Well, here's the thing, guys. He managed all the finances in the household. Mm-hmm. He managed all of it. And I remember when he gave me a printout of a spreadsheet, and it was hard to read, and there was wrinkled corners, and then there were handwritten notes on it. Something was crossed off, and a little note there that I couldn't make sense. And you know what I'm talking about. That spreadsheet was all of the passwords, all of the accounts, where they were, and the passwords. And I'll tell you, as we went through that awful time, he passed just about a year and a half ago. And I've helped my mother-in-law manage the finances really for the past 5-6 years, something like that, like in detail, not just as a CFP, but in detail. About a third of those passwords were right. And about 2/3 were wrong or not even helpful. So while that gave me some sort of clue and a little bit of access, it wasn't nearly enough. Mm-hmm. And there was still lots of time, lots of tears from my mother-in-law, and a lot of me just saying, "No, I got this. I'll figure this out." Making calls and okay, you're about to get a text with a password or a passcode. Send it over to me. Let's do this. Blah blah blah. So I don't know if you've ever gone through that before, or if you've thought about that. If you're the primary person that manages the finances in your household, is there a whole bunch of information that is really like access to your financial life that only you know? And if you weren't able to provide that access to open that gate, your family finances would crumble or would no longer be able to continue. Well, the solution to that is something that Kevin really and some folks some advisors at KFG that he works really closely with have really been innovating with and working with clients on, and that is helping with a password manager. So Kevin, let's start there, or wherever you want to take it. What is a password manager? How does it fit in your financial plan, right? Is this a financial plan discussion? And then we'll get into more of it.
So a password manager is a tool that you can use, and it's kind of confusing because that's a little bit of a generic term. Because you could say
tool is pretty generic. I mean, you could be a screwdriver, hammer.
Well, but you could use the word password manager to describe that spreadsheet
Yeah.
that you mentioned. You could use it to describe, well, I use this browser, and when I put in my credit card, it says, do you want us to save your credit card information? And I say yes. And so, or you, there are a number of different ideas in that spectrum. So the one that we'd like to talk about today is having one that you actually pay for. And I look at that and I think, oh man, what a great value, because you can get these for, I don't know, $3 or $4 a month, and it's a little bit cheaper if you pay annually. And but what you have using an actual password manager, not the yellow sticky note on the bottom of your computer monitor, but a digital password manager, is you create a master password, and then that gives you access to your password manager. And in that password manager, you can do a number of things. You can generate secure passwords. One of the big issues with passwords is people reuse their passwords. And
Never.
Yeah.
Never.
And so, of course they do, because I can't remember what I had for breakfast, let alone what my password was for this various web. And the funny thing is, I don't know about you, but my mind always tells me, oh no, create something really crafty. You'll remember it. It's so ridiculous.
Right.
And I fall for it sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. So you can generate a secure password. You're not using the same ones, because again, think of your friends, and you probably know their go-to passwords.
Yep.
You can think of your friends and what their go-to password is. So you have a generated password, and so personally, I use LastPass. We use LastPass at our company. We help a lot of our clients use LastPass. And is this a commercial for LastPass? Nope. Absolutely not. This is a commercial to say, hey, listen, when you're planning for your financial life, you want to have clarity and confidence. And a lot of your finances these days are online, and you want to have access to those, but you want to be careful about how you do it, because you're not the only one who wants access to your finances online, right? The bad guys want access to your finances online as well. And as I was telling you guys, on Sunday night, I'm laying in bed and I get an email that says, hey, did you just try and sign into your Venmo account? And if you didn't, you need to go in and change your password. And I didn't go try to sign into my Venmo account. Now, thankfully,
You didn't get your text either, because I texted you and said, Kevin, don't worry about this notice you're about to get. I'll explain later.
so somewhere, some bot, or bad person was trying to access my Venmo account. Now, thankfully, I had 2-factor authentication set up on that, so they couldn't get in. But I went in and looked at my password, and I'd set up Venmo a couple years ago, and my password was weak sauce. I mean, it was horrible.
For those
Was that
bad guys,
literally weak sauce?
For those bad guys listening out there,
I might start adopting that one. I kind of
I'm
like
sorry.
the sound
It was
of that.
weak sauce 1 exclamation point. No, but I mean, it was a horrible password, and it's been reused hundreds of times. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course. So, and if you've ever gotten a video from someone or something on Facebook saying, hey, you're in this video, click on this link. You're not in the video, and you got to call Grandpa and tell him to change his password.
jeez. Well, so LastPass is one type. There's what is it? 1Password. There's Zoho Vault. There's all sorts of them. But I want to ask Kevin, and you're probably thinking this too. Well, how do you compare and contrast that with the facial recognition of how Apple stores passwords, or Google? Like, is that safe? Is that sufficient? Or is it something different? And then again, we've got to connect this to your financial plan and take this down to sort of a practical level. If something happens to you, how then does this help? So we've got that and more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for being here. This is the Wise Money Show. You're at the Wise Money Show channel. What you're watching right now is our weekly 1-hour talk show. It airs right here on this channel, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Also on podcast at the same time. And yes, also on a few local radio stations in our hometowns, which is why the content is so long. All throughout the work week, though, we have Next Wise Step videos that take one financial concept and apply it directly to your financial life in a much more let's say direct way. Let's say 8 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that. So if you're all about trying to take your next wise step in your financial life, then make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and smash that thumbs up button. Thank you. Good stuff. See, the agenda just works itself out when you just laugh and be silly.
Roll with it.
Josh, in particular, your content in that first segment
was
breathtaking.
I was waiting for you guys to take a breath, actually.
So I wasn't sure how long the story was going to take. I think I was at 3 minutes, but it was long. Sorry. All right. So let's reset with how does it work? So you set up a master password, and then you get access to all your passwords. And so I think the first question is, well, you set up your master password. Well, isn't that just the same as someone guessing? So the person that guessed your Venmo, could they guess your LastPass, and now they have access to everything, right? So how does it keep it secure? And then how does it help when you if you need someone else to access it? Can you give authorization, that sort of thing? And then we'll just go from there. And
who's going to answer that one?
You. Like sharing it, right? You get to. So I'm not sure if you've talked to. I don't know. We talked a little bit about sharing, having multiple people have access in LastPass, right? Husband and wife, or
so I share it with Lori.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay,
but I mean, I don't know if that's legitimate, but
okay. Do you have a digital password manager, a way to safely and securely store all your passwords, but then also give a loved one, your spouse, access to that, so if they need it or something happens to you, they can continue to operate your finances? That's what we're helping you with right now. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name's Mike Bernard. With me in the KFC studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Every episode of the Wise Money Show is on podcast. Wherever you listen, go check that out. Search the Wise Money Show and subscribe to it and rate the show when you're there. We appreciate that. Josh, you're here.
I am.
Okay, welcome.
Are you going to let me talk?
I am.
That's the question.
Actually, okay, so let's start, and you can add in some input. I know you were chomping at the bit, Kevin, and I just didn't give you an opportunity, but let's reset about password managers, how they are connected to your financial life, and how they work.
You know what? I'll give credit to one of you, and I don't know which. Who came up with the phrase that your financial life needs to be decisionable at all times?
Oh, that was
that Kevin?
Actually, Lori. It's Lori Korhorn.
Probably. I love that, and it's true. That's part of the reason why we're always, saying from these radio waves how important it is to have a financial plan and to have your life organized. And I'm going to add one more phrase. Your life, yes, your financial life needs to be decisionable, but it also needs to be delegatable. Is that a word even?
Sure.
You need to be able to pull other people into your life. If you get conked on the head, or you have a stroke, or you have early onset Alzheimer's, and you're the one who's been managing your own finances, maybe you are the surviving spouse, and it's your kids that might need to be stepping in, not just another loved one like your spouse. So the whole point here is, and this is relatively new with our team, we've been coaching our clients to make sure that they have mechanisms in place, tools at their disposal to hand off things like passwords and online access and things. Because as you said in the last segment, Kevin, your whole life is online these days. Mm-hmm. You really can't avoid it. It's more and more a paperless society. So someone stepping in behind you to try to pick up the bill-paying function for your financial life, or the tax preparation function, whatever it may be, they may not have the same tools that a prior generation had, or the same clues at their disposal, because there's not as much paper coming in by the mailman every single month. Mm-hmm. So, you need to have this organized in a way, and it really is important, and it's tied in very closely to your financial plan. And part of the way that you can not just have your financial life decisionable, but also delegatable.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, so we talked about LastPass being one of the options. We're familiar with that. That's the one we have traditionally used at KFG. There's 1Password. There's Zoho Vault. There's also Apple and Google. We're going to get to those in just a second. But Kevin, I want to pick back up.
Yeah.
Let's say you're using LastPass or one of these services. You create your master password, and then once you log in there, you've got access to all of your passwords. So I'm assuming one major concern with this is, wait a second, so someone just needs to guess, some bot just needs to guess 1Password and they get access to all of mine, right? So is there two-factor authentication, or how does it work to make sure that the vault is actually secure?
Well, you're talking about the master password.
Yeah, and then what happens right after that?
So it's amazing to me what the security is on with LastPass. So last week I was on a business trip. I took my computer with me and I went to log in. And usually LastPass, the little thing up on the right hand side, whatever that's called, is
Extension.
Yeah, the extension is red and it was grayed out. I'm like, oh shoot, I have to re-enter LastPass. Well, and then I re-enter LastPass and I get an email that says, hey, listen, someone is accessing your computer from this location. Is this you? So I think as far as having the master password locked down, it should be fairly safe. Now, the big idea is with LastPass or 1Password or whatever you're using to manage your passwords, you should be the only one accessing this unless it's you and your wife.
Yeah.
But the sharing beyond that can be facilitated. So you might say, hey, listen, I want to share my Comcast password with my children. Well, I now have 3 adult children, so I've encouraged all of them to use LastPass. And LastPass has a sweet and easy sharing function.
Right.
Because I don't want to share my master password to LastPass with my children so they can find out what the Wi-Fi password is at home or what the Comcast password is.
Sure.
So I just want to share that particular password with them. And it's really, really easy, and I'm sure with other password managers as well, to just either email or text this password to them.
Yeah.
My master password is so secure that I can't for the life of me get Andrea to remember it. So she's always asking me, how do I get into LastPass again? I'm like, okay, this is not working. I finally wrote it down in a secure place that only she would find.
Yeah.
But that defeats the purpose right there, right?
So when you log in to LastPass, something like that, there's going to be two-factor authentication you're going to set up. There's going to be, like Kevin mentioned, some sort of geo mapping, something to make sure, okay, based on your location where you're trying to log in, is this really you? An email, like Kevin referred to from Venmo, that will happen if, hey, someone just tried to sign in from this, blah, blah, blah. So you can even have it set up where there's a dynamic authenticator, authentic token that's randomly generated. So it is stinking secure. Once you're in, and we would encourage you to do what Kevin shared, and that is have a family plan or something like that, where the folks that you want to have access to some of the passwords, some of the information, have their own vault as well. And they would have their own master password to get into that. And then from your LastPass, from your login, you can then efficiently and safely share certain passwords with them, certain usernames and passwords right into their vault. Okay, so some of them can be shared and you can choose, hey, these I don't want to share. Those are kept private, but then they'd have access to it. And like Josh said, you wouldn't need to share your master password with them because they'd have their own login, their own access.
Right.
This can be on all of your different devices, so you can access from your phone from wherever. That's the paid version, I believe, is being able to access it from anywhere. But the free version is just from one location.
Right, and likely depending on what your life is like and your use of technology, but a lot of times people will have a laptop and a phone, and you probably want to have access to both of them, because if you don't, you're probably going to try and take a shortcut. I'm just speaking from experience. When I did not have LastPass on my cell phone and it wasn't easy to access all my passwords on my cell phone, I wanted to have passwords that I can remember. Well, I can't remember very sophisticated passwords.
Yeah.
So that's where once I finally went all in, full embrace of the LastPass life, I have it on my laptop, I have it on my phone, and I can use it.
Well, then it's always with you as well, right? And we've started asking all of our clients when they come to their financial planning meetings, we want them to bring their online logins, their credentials and everything with them, because you never know when you're going to need to log into a site and make some changes within your 401k portfolio or access a bank balance or something like that. You want to have that stuff with you, but have it in a secure way. It still kind of blows my mind how many people are carrying around little books with their passwords written in them or pieces of paper or whatever.
In their wallet.
It's not safe. That's right.
No.
And I even had one client recently say that they have it all in their phone, but he was referring to he's created a contact for each of these logins and then has all his passwords in there. And I was like, okay, you know how many different apps are trying to access your contacts all the time.
I do want to hit that as well. Not that we're experts on what Apple and Google are doing, but I want to compare this to what they offer, and then just some other practical tips on how this fits within your estate plan, your overall financial plan. So we've got that and much more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Okay, good discussion. So let's circle back with, hey, here's how this connects to your financial plan, your financial life, and then this might be a good time to review your overall estate plan as well, and here's some of the reasons why. Kevin, what have you shared? I mean, to me, it's just security reasons why I would have a different service than just relying on Apple or Google to save my password, right?
So I Googled why I shouldn't use Google's password manager, and
Was there an article by LastPass in there?
Ironically, there were no results. But I think there are some. One of the issues is if I'm somewhere where if I'm just using, basically what it does, if I'm using Google, it's tied to my Gmail and my use of the Google browser or Chrome, right? So if I don't have access to Chrome, like if someone gives you their if you have access to like a MacBook, it's downloaded with Safari, right? So then, all right, well, and I know there are workarounds, but it just, if you have one password manager that can go across all different platforms, that to me is one of the reasons. And the other issue is, if you're logged in any of your devices, anyone can now go to Chrome and go to Amazon, and they're in.
Access anything, right?
Yeah. Right.
So this is now the same. Technically, you'd say, well, that same risk exists for LastPass if you have the extension on that computer and it's turned on.
Yeah, auto-filling passwords when you go to certain sites and everything.
Right, but the LastPass extension, which is frustrating at sometimes, will shut itself off.
Got it.
And then I don't know if we need to make the point of when you log in. I don't know about you, but when I log into LastPass, I put in my password, and then I do have to go in and put in the number.
Right. That's that authenticator.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that is.
That's what I was trying to get.
I don't know if that's mandatory or if that's a.
I wasn't sure if you'd talk through that with clients. I was trying to tee you up for that in that last segment. But I didn't know, like, because I hadn't done this with clients yet, and so I don't know if that's part of the requirement.
So we have been in the connections meeting.
And has there been anything brought up about you got to download their authenticator?
No, but
that's a choice that you get to make, though, right?
I would
Whether or not you turn on two-factor.
I don't know,
because we have it at work and I don't have it at home.
Yeah.
I probably should, but I haven't set that up at home.
I mean, I have the adoption rate is different across the board. I mean, when I got this, when I first got turned on the LastPass, like, I was hooked. Like, I couldn't get enough of it, and I was getting everything into it. I've seen some clients have that response, and other clients are like,
Just humoring you or something?
well, no, it's just they're like, well, this is just another thing to make my life more complicated. And so if you don't fight through that to the other side, you're not going to do it. But I'm telling you, it does make it amazing if someone now all someone needs to do if they've got LastPass on their phone is bring their phone, and it all works.
Yeah.
As opposed to, well, I've got the Apple stuff set up on my phone so it works there, but none of that stuff that is stored on my phone works when I'm on my computer because I've got, a Dell or HP or something like that.
Right.
Okay, let's get into it, and we'll wrap up this topic here in the third segment. So, when's the last time you updated or reviewed your estate plan? Could be time for it right now. Password Manager might be something you want to implement as you do that review. We're helping you with that right now. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name's Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Stay up to date on all Wise Money content. Find us online, wisemoneyshow.com, and then all over social media, wherever you're at. We are there as well. Search the Wise Money Show. Been talking about the use of a password manager as a way to help facilitate the transition of, accessing your financial life if something were to happen to you, or really just to facilitate life at times where you would have a digital secure password vault, okay, and your spouse or your loved ones or the individual that you would want to assist would have their own as well, and then you can securely share passwords with them so that if something happened to you or they needed to access something, they'd be able to do so. So let's compare and contrast that, Kevin. During some bonus content on the break, we were talking about, well, how do you compare that to what Google offers, what Apple offers? What thoughts would you share as someone says, oh yeah, I've got that on my phone, all my stuff is just stored right there?
Well, if you have it on your phone, you have an iPhone, the ability to go across platforms is challenging. So if for some reason you didn't have access to your phone and you had, for instance, a PC at work, now you're kind of stuck.
Right.
Versus having a third party where it's accessible across all platforms, and it's easily added as a browser extension or as an app on your phone.
Yeah.
So you've got the app on your phone, the browser extension, you're in business. Now, as we mentioned during the break, you definitely want to make sure that you're turning it off, because if the browser extension is up and you're logged in and you walk away from your computer and you don't have great snooze rules for your computer, you've got a problem potentially, because someone can walk in, hop on your Amazon account and order something.
Yeah.
And so just a little life hack, I showed one of the younger guys this week. You hit the Windows button and L, and it locks your computer.
Yeah, nice.
So, because he's like, oh, do Control-Alt-Delete, and then no.
Here's my concern. The Facebook identity stuff, or the Facebook, the facial recognition. My goodness, it's easy for me to say. On your iPhone is so easy, convenient. I actually try to set that up for a lot of things. The reason why I would still use a LastPass as opposed to just relying on that, yes, Kevin, for convenience. I mean, everything's on my phone, but what if I'm not working on my phone? What if I'm working on my home computer or something like that, and now it's inconvenient for me to get my passwords. But also, I got 3 young kids, and those kids have friends. And when we're driving to practice or whatever, they want my phone because they want to play music, or or if we're trying to have a parent conversation, grown-up conversation, and they want to look something up, they'll just, hey, can I borrow your phone? Because our kids don't have phones. And so if all of that is accessible right there, it's all accessible right there to them. And above and beyond all of this, we're talking about the need to share your passwords with the right person. Yeah, we mean the right person, right? Not everyone in your family. Like, this would be selective to someone that would be carrying on your financial life if you suddenly passed away or were unable to do so, you don't want to share it with everyone, right? That's sort of the point. And so, and then the whole thing with Google and Google storing passwords, I know Google and Apple, big, huge names, so lots of dollars spent on security. They've also had some famously hacked stories, right? And so I'm assuming they've buffed that up, but it just does concern me.
Yeah, I mean, they would never deplatform anyone, though. They never censor anyone. And so, I mean, you're not at risk of that at all as long as you think the way they do. And so, you can take the risk, because if you look at that, if we've learned anything in the last few years, it's a risk to be on a platform with someone that you might not ideologically align with.
Yeah. Yep. So hopefully this got you at least turned on to the idea of using a password manager as part of your overall estate plan, contingency planning, and risk management. Now, if you haven't reviewed your overall estate plan recently, now's the time. You don't need to do it every single year or every month or every quarter like you might be due with your 401k or some other areas of your financial life. But estate planning is one of the 6 areas of your financial life. Therefore, decisions you make in other areas or as life evolves, it's going to impact this area, your estate plan. So why, what else would you want to review, or why else is it important to review your estate plan every so often?
Well, you were just alluding to the fact earlier that when you're setting up your estate plan, you're kind of choosing who is it that you're going to trust to step in and act on your behalf if you can't, or if you're gone. So this might be having a power of attorney in place, who has the authorization to transact business on your behalf. Have you equipped them is kind of the theme of this whole show.
That's
right? But sometimes the person that you would select, they pass away, or maybe there's a falling out with someone in the family that you would have trusted in the past, and sometimes those roles need to be replaced, or the people that you would leave money behind to. We often think of an estate plan as most people think of the will as the central piece of that, and I wouldn't necessarily say that, but the will is who are the beneficiaries going to be of the leftover stuff at the end of your life. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those wishes can change as well.
Not because you just got in an argument with someone,
but
right? Because a new family member was born, or some other life change. I don't know. I mean, and I'll just tell you right now, my father-in-law was listed as the guardian of our kids if something happened to us well beyond the time he was diagnosed. Right? I mean, these sorts of things change, and even someone that's aware, we didn't just jump on it and change it because it's sort of confusing. You don't want to think about it. Life's busy. You're in the whirlwind, blah, 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 still in denial. But those are the sorts of things where you've got to regularly, every couple of years, 2 or 3 years, look at your estate plan, see, should we be changing anyone listed in here?
Well, and not just that, but also your financial life is constantly changing as well. There are new accounts that get opened, and sometimes maybe you've in a rush you've set up a new investment account and you didn't get all the beneficiaries lined up and consistent with your overall estate plan. It's good periodically, at least every couple of years, to do an audit of who do you have named as beneficiaries on all of your accounts, and make sure that the things that you put in place actually got put in place. Just yesterday, I was meeting with a client who his mom passed away and he's dealing with the estate and everything. They have signed paperwork saying that they put the right beneficiaries in place on all the accounts, but the custodian didn't update it. And now it's a little bit of a battle and tug of war on who's going to win on this. Yeah. So thankfully they have copies of it all, but you may have gone through all the right steps in the past, but not every change actually took, potentially.
I had a client pass away last year, and everything was in her trust, all the accounts and everything else. And when I was working with the adult child on transitioning and everything, he said, "Hey, Mom ever tell you about this account she had at the bank?" I said, No. He's like, "Yeah, now I've got to open probate." I'm like, What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, Mom had some money at the bank, and she just assumed that it was put in the trust, and it wasn't. And it was just in her name, no beneficiary. And so now it cost thousands of dollars in expense simply because she assumed it was in the trust, and it wasn't." So that beneficiary review. And then speaking of trust, the other reason to review your estate plan every so often is some of the documents you need, some of the structure might change. Do you need a revocable living trust? Mm-hmm. Do you need something more complicated? Do you have the laws changed and your healthcare power of attorney doesn't have the HIPAA authorization in it? So you might need a different structure. Work with your CFP, review your overall financial plan, and confirm that it fits within all areas of your financial life. All right, we've got questions from fans of the show. That and more coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. That was the third segment, right? Okay. I know it does seem like long right now.
The thing that I don't think we hammered home is the beauty of the password manager is if I share a spreadsheet with you, whomever you might be my spouse, my child, my whatever. I share my spreadsheet with you, and then I decide I don't trust you anymore. I have to change every single password. With a password manager, I have to change one password.
Yeah.
That to me, it's not the only wonderful thing, but I mean, well, it's one of the beautiful things at work as well.
Yeah. Sure.
So,
Sure.
When you've shared a password or access, you can revoke that. Or
I don't.
Oh, yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Like the example you shared with the kids where
Right.
you give them just a few passwords.
Right.
Can you retrieve that or pull it back? Or
I don't know that you can.
no?
Because once they accept it. But actually, there is. I'd have to go into LastPass and look, but because there is a shared. I think you can see what you shared with whom.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep.
It's a great question.
All right, so let's start. There's one near the top. That's where I started. Near the top, I think it's third, fourth one down. Jonathan. So we'll do that one and then the one below that. And then if there's time, we can hit James as well.
Actually, dude, I think you can.
Revoke?
Because I'm looking at the shared with others, and it looks like you can.
I'm pretty sure you can.
I'm surprised at all of the ones that I've tried to share that people haven't gone in.
Sorry about that.
You can also hide the password, so they can have access to use it, but
They can't see it.
password is.
Yeah. For bonus content there, yeah, when you're sharing a password with someone else, you can hide the password, meaning through LastPass, their use of LastPass, they can input that password into the site to log in. But if they wanted to just view it or change it or something, they can't. It's sort of grayed out. It's
Yeah, you can't.
Hidden.
That might be quite possibly one of the most irritating things you'll ever experience in your lifetime when you're trying to.
But when you're co-functioning, and the whole show hasn't been about co-functioning, although that's important. The show really has been about use a password manager for contingency.
Yeah.
So anyway, we can pick any of that back up before we hit questions.
I think we're good with questions. I don't know.
All
What
right.
do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. Thanks for being here, friends. My name is Mike. Nope. We're going to start by saying what the show is before we introduce myself. Okay? We'll try that this time.
I was gonna say your name is Mike.
Yeah,
You're
I
all
know,
right.
but
Keep going.
We're gonna say what we're doing first before who we are. We'll try that this time, just
we'll
for a
log
change.
that one in the bloopers reel.
Thanks for being here, friends. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. My name's Mike Bernard. Here with me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Every episode of the Wise Money Show is on the YouTube channel. If you're watching, you just got a blooper from me. There you go. It happens frequently, actually. Go to YouTube, search the Wise Money Show, and follow us there. I mean it. Follow us, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because not only are you made aware every time we drop a new episode, full episode of the Wise Money Talk Show, you get all the other content as well that we create and post there. Some of our best thinking, latest thinking on helping you take your next wise step in your financial life. So go to YouTube, search the Wise Money Show, follow us there. On to listener questions. And honestly, most questions come through the YouTube channel, comments and whatnot. And first one from Jonathan was submitted there. It's a couple months ago now. But does a person who takes a withdrawal on an inherited Roth IRA have to pay income tax on the distribution if the Roth IRA owner had the IRA for 5 years or more. I thought withdrawals on the inherited Roth were going to be tax-free.
Yeah,
So he's asking the question and then also saying, well, is it contingent if they had it for 5 years?
Right, and that's the key because we've talked on the show quite a bit, pointing out that you need to have had your Roth IRA open for at least 5 years, so that when you start making withdrawals, it's all tax free. And I think the question here is, well, what happens if the person who originally owned that Roth IRA passes away either before or after the 5-year mark has been reached? If the 5-year mark is already passed, they owned it, it was open for 5 years, then it's fine. You're opening or you're taking withdrawals from a Roth IRA. It's tax free. Enjoy those dollars as a blessing in your life. If they had not already reached the 5-year mark, you're going to want to wait until the 5-year mark has been reached so that you can avoid that penalty, assuming that it's a consequential amount, right?
Yeah.
If you pay taxes and even a penalty or anything like that, when you draw money out of a Roth IRA too early, it may be a small enough dollar amount and a big enough need that you don't care. But obviously, we prefer that you don't pay unnecessary taxes or unnecessary penalties.
Here's my guess, and I don't have the code right in front of me, and I actually haven't dealt with this in person. Maybe Kevin can find it. I would assume that even if you pass away after owning it for less than 5 years, the person that inherits it would be able to draw the growth out tax-free. No? Mm-mm. Josh, you're saying you've gone through this or you found it?
The 5-year rule does apply still in an inherited Roth IRA.
Interesting.
But you have to get past that 5-year mark
from
when they opened it, not when you inherited it.
Yeah. And you've got 10 years to withdraw the dollars.
Right.
And when you're talking about a Roth IRA with this new 10-year rule, you're going to want to delay that withdrawal as long as possible. Right, because you're going to want as much of that goodness as you can get, which that goodness is that tax-free growth. If someone opened the account and passed away within 5 years, Josh, to your first point, probably not a lot of growth in there, right? And obviously depends on what they're invested in, depends on the time frame, right? Because the S&P 500 could be the greatest investment ever during this period and be a terrible investment during another period, right? So it really just depends. But great question. I wonder, it certainly sounds like Jonathan's asking this because he's maybe experiencing it and he's a little surprised. The interesting thing is, like you said, he's referencing, well, if the original IRA account owner had the account for 5 years or more, I thought it was going to be tax-free. It is. Mm-hmm. It'd be tax-free to them if they drew it out at 59.5 and whatnot, and it'd be taxable or tax-free to you.
I read that last question, though. I thought the withdrawals on an inherited Roth IRA would be tax-free under all circumstances all the time.
Yeah.
It's just free to go.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they're in the Internal Revenue Code, there's all kinds of gotchas, right? All kinds of catches that you need to be aware of these details.
Work with your certified financial planner. I was telling you a story of an individual that I'd served. Our firm has served for a long time, and she passed away last year working with the adult son. And when she passed away, like I said, left a trust account, but also an IRA and a Roth IRA. We'd been doing Roth conversions all along. And so the IRA was smaller, and based on the children's tax bracket, said cash this thing out right now, pay all the tax right now. The Roth IRA, we're not touching for 10 years. Something happens and we need to, great, but we're going to let that thing marinate inside that Roth IRA package and that tax sheltering for as long as possible, which we've got 10 years.
That's great.
Yeah, I initially wanted to argue with Joshua, but I think he's actually right this time.
So this time, every time.
Put it in the record book. Call
time.
My wife. Quick, tell her.
Look, so this 5-year period does have to be satisfied from when you start it. So the moral of the story is start a Roth IRA. If you're listening to this, go start a Roth IRA today.
Yep.
There are life hacks to do that.
Start it and max that thing out. Go your whole career,
if you can, because there are a number of people listening today that can't contribute to a Roth IRA because they're phased out
too high
income-wise. But you could convert, even if you converted $100 and just left it in a cash account somewhere.
Yeah. Right.
So
All right, so this is a piggyback question, similar one, also posted on the YouTube channel. If you roll over your 401k to an IRA when switching jobs, which just did a Next Y Step video on the top reasons why you'd probably consider doing that. What are those reasons? So go to YouTube and digest that content. Would this affect, so rolling your 401k to an IRA, would this affect your eligibility for a backdoor Roth IRA contribution with the pro rata rule? Does not affect your eligibility.
Okay, so
not at all. It would impact the tax ramifications of doing so, and you'd want to work with your CFP because it very well may mean you shouldn't do that. But go ahead, Kevin. I cut you off.
Well, no. I was just saying this is a jargon-free zone, and that is if we are judging the gymnasts here, that's like a 9.8 in the complexity score. So I want to read the question again and interpret it for folks.
Great.
So I've got money in my 401k. I roll it into an IRA, and so I'm assuming I had pre-tax money in my 401k. Now I've got a pre-tax IRA. So call that a traditional IRA. If I have a traditional IRA and I want to then do a backdoor IRA,
where I contribute money into it and not deduct it. So now I have after-tax money that I've contributed to my IRA that I then want to move or convert to my Roth IRA. Am I not eligible to do that strategy because now I've got pre-tax money in?
That's the wrong word in the question,
Correct.
right? It's
Right.
not a question of eligibility. You're allowed to do this backdoor Roth contribution. The catch, though, is that when you make your contribution to your IRA and then you subsequently convert it into the Roth, you're pulling just a little bit of your contribution and a whole bunch of dollars from your rollover, and you're creating a much bigger taxable event. You thought it was going to be tax-free, probably. That was your intention, and it's actually going to be taxable because of that pro rata. But you're allowed to do it. You just might not want to.
right? So if I didn't have a traditional IRA and I was just putting $7,000 in, not deducting it, and then converting it immediately, let's call that a backdoor Roth IRA, that's fine. Once I take pre-tax money and put it into that traditional IRA, those pre-tax dollars participate in the conversion process,
That's right.
whether I want them to or not. Because I've had this situation where at the beginning of the year, a client didn't have any money in their traditional IRA. We did the backdoor Roth IRA, and towards the end of the year, they rolled money out of the 401k into their traditional IRA. Well, boom, we just made that money participate in the conversion process.
Correct. Let me just tell you when that happened to a ton of folks. The pandemic, when all of a sudden, life was going on as normal and you're doing your tax planning, blah, blah, blah. And then 6 months later, you switch jobs or you were let go. And all of a sudden it's like, well, I guess I'm going to roll this 401k over to an IRA, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got this issue. So
This is an example, though, of why we believe in financial planning and not making just blanket statements or blanket recommendations to people. Because often our default is when someone leaves their employer, roll that money into a traditional IRA where you have more investment options, you take it with you, it's always at your fingertips, that sort of thing. But you might be boxing yourself out of this strategy of doing backdoor Roth IRA contributions. So sometimes it makes sense to do that rollover, sometimes it doesn't. It's your unique financial plan that determines the difference there.
And what if, it depends on the size of the 401k that you're rolling over to the IRA, and again, yes, your tax bracket and whatever else, but what if it still made sense to roll the 401k over to the IRA and then you convert that? And that part's going to be taxable, but still, you're in the 22% tax bracket. And so you're comfortable with paying taxes at that rate and then having them in the Roth to grow tax-free forever. So this is absolutely, yes, a 9.9 on the complexity score, but also very much and squarely a financial planning question.
I give it a 9.8.
9.8?
Do they average out the judges' scores?
No, they drop the highest and lowest and then average the rest, I think is what it is. But anyway. All right, really quick here. Another question on the YouTube channel. If we roll our traditional 401k to an IRA, is it a good idea to make our living trust the beneficiary? We don't have any kids, want to divide any leftovers to our siblings on both sides. I would say yes and no. You can do it, yes. You've got to make sure that trust isn't structured in a way that when those beneficiaries receive the dollars, that it instantly is going to be liquidated to them and all of the tax sheltering will be gone, right? So a lot of times we hear people say that they want to add their trust or they've got a trust, they want to make it the beneficiary when that's not really necessary. I mean, I'm seeing here that you want to spread the leftovers to our siblings on both sides of the family. Depending on your age and your siblings' age, are they old enough where you could just list them as the beneficiary? I mean, you could divvy the account up and list a bunch of beneficiaries as opposed to having to go into the trust, making sure that trust is considered a qualified or conduit trust, whether the tax rules with trust has changed then or are still okay, and then hoping that it gets to those heirs in a tax-efficient way. Or you could just make them the beneficiary.
Yeah, there's a decision-making process here because, as I would say, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. So yes, you can make your revocable living trust the beneficiary of your IRA dollars. And to me, the decision process there is, do I like my siblings or not? If I've never really liked my siblings in the first place, make your revocable living trust the beneficiary of your IRA dollars. If you love them and you want their lives to be fairly simple and easy, then make them the beneficiaries, the direct beneficiaries. They have that money. They can eat, so they each have their own account now, and they can do what they need to do.
All right. Well, thanks for the questions. That's all the time we have for today. On behalf of Josh Gregory, Kevin Korhorn, all of us at Korhorn Financial Group, have a great weekend. We'll see you next Saturday for the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group.
Securities offered through Silver Oak Securities, member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through KFG Wealth Management, LLC. Doing business as Korhorn Financial Group. KFG Wealth Management, LLC and Silver Oak Securities Incorporated companies are unaffiliated.